We are bringing you the latest on the U.S., Russia, Ukraine peace talks and EU's emergency meeting. Let's now have Dr. Marek Laskiewicz to discuss more on this. Good to have you, Dr. Laskiewicz. Do you agree that with the recent move by Trump to hold peace talks with Russia and Ukraine, NATO has become toothless?
Certainly, it is of very much less relevance than it was even just a few weeks ago. It has now essentially been sidelined, and the meeting by the European ministers as Europe is a further blow to the NATO concept, and therefore it's not so much toothless as simply fast becoming irrelevant.
Is there anything NATO can do to quickly intervene so as not to become insignificant in the Ukraine and Russia talks?
Yes, it should take part in European conference. It should have actually summoned this conference itself instead of relying upon the Europeans to do it. It should take a more proactive role. Unless it does so, it will be seen to be simply a yesterday's organization.
Can the world expect from this emergency meeting that's coming up in days amongst the EU leaders? What is the game changer? What do you think they could possibly come up with so that they could be seen as significant in the talks that's ongoing between US, Russia and Ukraine?
The only thing they can do which would impress Trump is if they agree to take over the policing of any future treaty between Ukraine and Russia. This is what he wants. He basically does not want America to spend a dollar more on this war. He doesn't want to put a single American on the ground. So if Europe said it would do it all, that would impress Trump. But simultaneously, please note, this also would reinforce the whole business of USA no longer being committed to Europe. So it really is a double-edged sword. Europe, if it does take a more active stance, simultaneously supports the move out of this conflict, out of NATO, that America is doing right now.
See coming out of this, especially between the US and Russia, and then on the other hand between the Ukraine, that's Ukrainians and the US. What deal, what common ground do you see coming out of the meeting between the US and Ukrainian President and Zelenskyy?
I don't see anything coming out of it for quite a simple reason. America wants peace. Ukraine wants peace on its terms. Here, there is a direct divergence. And simultaneously, of course, the same situation exists with Russia. But as Trump has already indicated, and other people like Sexeth, that they are prepared to take on board Russian views. And therefore, this means that the dialogue with Ukraine is not really a dialogue so much as can they force Ukraine to accept terms it would otherwise not do if needs be on some sort of reciprocal grounds of having guarantees, but already it's quite clear the guarantees will come from Europe and not from the States. I witnessed the conference we mentioned a while ago about European leaders meeting together. So on the whole, the USA-Ukraine meeting is vitiated before it started.
Has indicated that he did not believe it was practical for Kyiv to join NATO and that it was unlikely that Ukraine would regain all its territory. Do you think this will sit well with Ukraine?
No, Ukraine rejects obviously both of these. However, Ukraine is in no position to insist. The key point is America has said all this openly, publicly, so it is quite clear it is prepared to accept a peace deal along Russian lines, albeit not down to the final dotted I and crossed T, but certainly on the lines that Putin wants. And therefore, this is utterly what Ukraine has rejected. And it would therefore follow that Ukraine will be in a position, will have to try and refuse a peace treaty, which is more or less being set up by US and Russia together.
So Zelenskyy, on the one hand, has suggested that the EU needs its armies. Seems Zelenskyy does not trust Trump's side. Now, what do you make of his suggestion about the EU, stationing its own armies, that it was high time for them to do that? What is your take on this?
First and foremost, it's not going to happen for a very simple reason. Europe has had years, decades, literally, to come up to this and does not want to do it. Each nation state within Europe is just that, a nation state, and it does not want to hand over control to the EU. Secondly, some countries have been utterly against it for years, namely the UK, because it would mean, in their opinion, that America would no longer be the guarantor of Europe, and they believe more in American arms and military than they do Europe's. Moreover, it has to be stated that such a European army is not in the league of USA's in the quality of its troops, the amount of spending, the quality of its equipment, and therefore this European army, which looks good on paper, is both impossible to realize, and even if it were, would not be a very good army.
But I wonder what you make of Zelensky's position now. What can the Ukrainians do to still maintain their territory? This is a battle of, territorial borders and all of that, with Kyiv. What can Zelensky do as it is? Seems like he's at the point of being helpless from what you've explained.
Yes, this is a fundamental issue. Without America, can Ukraine defend itself? Well, he can do three things. One, he can go to Europe for simply more equipment, that is to say, to carry on giving aid and to in some way try and fill some of the hole that will be left if America stops supplying arms and aid. Two, he can try and persuade America to change his mind, and this is where these rare earths have come into it. Can he, in effect, sell off Ukraine's mineral wealth and get America back on board? And three, he can actually come up with his own peace suggestions, which might be accepted. He has so far not done anything along these lines, simply said that they want the 2014 borders back. And at some point, he was saying Putin should be tried as a war criminal. If he made some serious proposals, they might go down better than expected. So it is possible he does something, but he has to move relatively quickly because Trump, as has been shown, can move very, very fast indeed.
From what Trump has been doing, which is, the tariffs to heightened border security to peace talks and all, are all of these geared towards improving the USA's finances, considering this ongoing, peace talks with Ukraine and Russia?
Yes, Trump is a businessman. And if you're actually underneath all the froth, look what he's doing. He's essentially trying to reestablish USA financially. The tariffs are because USA has almost $1 trillion trade deficit. He wants to put that closer to zero. And the business of the cuts in government spending are because USA has about $36 trillion debt, and it is threatened constantly by the government being shut down through lack of money. And he wants to deal with that as well. And the Ukrainian war is part of this. America's put a lot of tens of billions of dollars into Ukraine, and he's saying, no, halt. If you look under the froth, I repeat, President Donald Trump has actually got a reasonably sensible plan of simply making America financially good again, which at present it isn't.
So now let me take you on the whole Trump, since we're talking about Trump. Just in the news, we heard that he's supplied Israel just today some Mk-84 weapon. And he's talking, about peace talks with Israel. He's talking about peace talks with Ukraine. But what's the essence of sending a weapon when you're discussing, a ceasefire deal? This process has been very delicate from the beginning, talking about the ceasefire deal with Israel and Gaza. What's the essence of sending that weapon, to Israel?
In my opinion, it shows that he's still sticking to his original plan that all the Gazans should leave. This is a very specific weapon on a scale of destruction, makes it very, very hard to rebuild afterwards. And I think that the reason why he's sending these weapons is because he's still pushing forward his vision. Please remember the word peace has several, if you like, interpretations. After all, if the Gazans aren't there, there is no Israeli-Gazan war. That is a peace, but scarcely a peace that the Arabs and the Gazans want. As we just said about Ukraine and Russia, what does the peace that America want there? The weapon here in Israel is indicative that Trump has his own peace plans in mind. and they don't look very favorable to the Gazans because both he and Israel has stated there is no place for Hamas.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Marek, for joining us on Arise America. He joined us from London.